McNair gives it to George, running right up the middle. Touchdown! Titan! There are no flags on the field! It's a miracle!
Safety, now you're one-on-one with it.
Shows why he's the man! In trouble. Sack!
Ladies and gentlemen, Titan Nation, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Titan. Today, I have a guest who is a Super Bowl champion winner, played for the Tennessee Titans as well. Of course, the most important thing, college/pro football analyst. We have Mr. Kevin Carter here. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thankful to be here.
There we go, man. Again, you have quite a resume. That's one of the things, talking to these football players and loving seeing what they do after football's done. Yes, football's still part of your life, but I mean, like I said, you have a laundry list of things that you've accomplished outside of football, which is good. But let's dive right into it, saying that you're from Tallahassee. You were born in Tallahassee?
I was born in Miami, actually.
Okay, Miami.
I was born in Mount Sinai Hospital, lived in Carroll City until I was about 5, and then parents moved to Tallahassee, and that's where I grew up. So
Tallahassee. Now I have to bring it out, man. I just growing up in Tallahassee. Why aren't you a Seminole, man? What happened? Why'd you go to Gainesville? Why'd you go 2 hours away and go to Gainesville?
yeah, I've been asked that question more than once. Basically, for me at the time, I mean, I was a pretty decent student out of high school,
Okay.
and I wanted to do something with medical research or pharmacological research or pharmacy or something like that. I was a big math and science kid, and we didn't have the NIL, and we didn't have social media, and there was one ESPN, and the world was a lot smaller back in those days. 40 years ago, dare I say, and I think that, my perception of how to go out and create that which I wanted to be in this world wasn't without an education. It wasn't without, a place where I could make good contacts, get internships, find a good job, create a network that I could take advantage of, having played football somewhere. And I think not that that's not on the agenda of players today, but I think there's a lot more at work for a lot of these 4- and 5-star kids. And back then, by today's standards, I would have been considered a 5-star recruit. Like, I was USA Today, Parade Magazine All-American and everything. And so when I started to look at colleges, my world was growing.
Okay.
My perception of the world, everything that I knew about everything was brand new. So I looked everywhere, got recruited by everyone. And, I listened to people like Lou Holtz and Tom Osborne and people at great institutions that were promising, unbelievable networks, great opportunities, national championship, scenario type places for excellence. And for me, the appeal of going to one of these places, a Duke, a Notre Dame, a place that I could go and just play football and get an entire education, a couple $100,000 paid for. That was really cool. So I looked around, and, of course, Florida State was right there in my backyard. Of course, at that time coming out, in 1991, Florida State and Miami were all top 10 programs. So I couldn't go wrong from a football factory standpoint.
Gotcha.
But for me, it was about the entire package. And there was a guy that came in from Duke who'd won the ACC at Duke. And he was, now the Florida head coach. And I really hadn't considered Florida. I was always a fan, watched Florida State, Miami, all these schools play growing up. but I wasn't really a Gator fan. I was more of a Georgia fan, actually. I was a big Herschel Walker, Vince Dooley fan. And then when I was getting recruited, Vince Dooley stepped down as the coach and Ray Goff took over. That's why I'm not a Georgia Bulldog. Um, and this guy named Steve Spurrier, said that, hey, you can go somewhere else and get beat by us, or you can come to Florida and you can be part of something special as we are going to, galvanize and revolutionize Florida football. We were going to own the SEC. We're going to win championships. We're going to do these big things. And he was just a little bit cocky, just a little bit, I guess, arrogant about what he thought he could do. And I wanted to join that. And from an academic standpoint, it had everything that I wanted. It had the medical school, it had the pharmacological research, it had everything. Little did I know I would major in zoology and never use a day of it, being that I played 14 years in the NFL and then went on to broadcast. So the rest is sort of history, as they say.
Well, that's the crazy thing about, especially college and stuff. You just never know what life will take you. And you know what?
Yeah.
At least you got something. But again, you stayed in the NFL, which I think you did a pretty good job in. I mean, with the
A pretty
Gators,
good career.
let me tell you, the Gators as well. I mean, 4 seasons as a Gator, won 3 Southeastern Conference champions. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's big.
that's huge, man. That's something that especially a lot of college kids, I don't think get to.
When you say something like that, when I say it like 30 years later, it's like no one does that. Like Saban had teams that, they owned the SEC and they were always relevant. Like we killed everybody. Like we beat the crap out of Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama, and we did it and running up the score fashion. It was great. So you kind of take things for granted, when you're going through them, but they mean more when you start getting gray on your face.
I mean, of course, you have those, acolytes. You have those things that you can cherish. And like I said, I could go down the list. I broke down your freshman year. Played all 11 games. Started to sophomore year. You were second All-C. SEA selection and a Football News honorable mention All-American after complying 64 tackles, 12 force QB hurdles, 3.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. Like you don't hear like stats like that anymore. Junior year, 59 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 12 pressures for loss, and a blocked field goal, and was recognized as the first team all selection. Like, you want me to continue? I got
No,
this.
no, dude. I'm old, so my Wikipedia page is filled up with a lot of stuff, and I don't know if it was because I was pretty good or because I'm old. So
Evan,
we'll leave it at that.
I'm gonna go with this. I think you were pretty damn good. All right, man. I think you were really
Appreciate
good.
it.
How was your time with the Florida Gators and that, especially that football team? I mean, like I said, I can listen. It's nothing special like that.
It was magical. It was an honor and a pleasure and a blessing to be a part of something so special in that moment in time. Florida had just come off of probation in the 80s and was sort of just, couldn't go to a bowl game. And I think they won the SEC in 1990. Coach Spurrier first got there. And then he brought us all in his first recruiting class in 91. And, we changed things. I mean, we the whole fun and gun offense, what modern offenses look like today in the NFL. It's like he was doing that in the early 90s. I mean, we had, receivers for days. We had skill position guys for days. But the thing about those teams is Coach Spurrier had a sadistic weight and strength conditioning coach named Rich Tootin. And we were the most finely conditioned, psychotically strong, crazy bunch of bought in kids that you might ever meet. And, that process of iron sharpening iron, the fierce competition on a daily basis, it was like being in a den of wolves. I mean, where you just had to fight and claw for every piece of respect and playing time. And it was always under fire. but it was a great situation. It was a blessing. It was cool to be a part of something cool, because I think that, when you get to the NFL, you realize that it's really a business. You realize, and you kind of get heartbroken, because you think that, everyone is there and everyone's doing everything they can to try and win. Well, that's true, but you also have the business side of football. You've also got people making business decisions and career decisions, things that affect their lives, that affect their children. And that's what you're living in. It's a bunch of grown men, and it's just completely different. The dynamic of teamwork and camaraderie. It's a really rare thing to find that type of camaraderie that you had in college on the NFL level. And that's why I'm talking to you, because the Titans, that group was one of those special groups that had a special esprit de corps. That was missing when I first got to the NFL. I was a sixth pick overall for the St. Louis Rams. We were in a new city. The fans were really excited, but they had been burned by Art Modell, and I mean, not Art Modell, but Bill Bidwell, with the Cardiac Cardinals in the '80s, and they went to Arizona, and there wasn't a team there. And we came there and we stunk. We were an ailing organization, and then in year three, a guy named Dick Vermeil walks in, and he hasn't coached in 14 years. And, he promises that we're going to win a world championship in 3 years. And, I mean, all of those things, that whole process of playing, and adjusting to the NFL, to the business side of it, was totally, it kind of jades you after a while, and then you start becoming one of those players that makes business decisions. And I'm really thankful and lucky to have played for a coach like Spurrier, because it gave me a picture of what teamwork really looked like, and on an amateur status. And then when we did form the special group that we formed, the greatest show on turf. And then when I played against the Titans, and I met this other group of guys, and I'm like, shit, these guys have the same thing we have. They got the same togetherness. And then, lo and behold, I go and join that locker room a couple of years later. And, I had to fight and claw for respect, and just, I thought to myself, I got to step my game up. These guys, man, Eddie and Steve and, B-Hop, and, I mean, there's just a great group of men that lead this team. And to have played in two situations where I got to the top of the mountain and then got close, there's a real reason why. It's culture, it's people, it's a collective idea, it's collective bought-in status for a moment in time that places the responsibility of you being your best, no matter what your contribution is, large or small, to the team. And you truly believe that is the difference between winning and losing. And you play that way and you live that way. And so I was really lucky to have played for someone like Spurrier, but blessed equally to get in the league and be a part of two organizations, like the Rams and the Titans, that were special pieces of my journey.
Definitely. Now, do you think the transition from college to pro, and that, like you said earlier, like that business side, you think that was something that was kind of like the biggest difference between NFL? Obviously, the game's a lot faster, but like that was maybe your turning point where, like, oh man, like I see the football side, but the business side is where I wasn't, I guess, expecting.
I was naive, I think, to the business side, because at the end of the day, I thought it's still football, right? And it's still teamwork, and it's still the art of working on your craft to get better. There's so much more to it, right? Like I'm on the field my second year, okay, and I practice, and I'm coming off of a season my rookie year where I had 6.5 sacks. I had a good rookie year, made the all rookie team. And my second year, I think I had like 9.5 sacks. So I was, on my way to becoming a respected player. I'm, approaching double-digit sacks, and I'm in the middle of my third season. I think I'm on the field, and this season was a great season. I think I had 12 sacks that year, but unfortunately, I, played in the NFC, and Sean Jones and Reggie White and all those guys were still playing, so they were kind of edging me out of Pro Bowl votes. But I remember at that time walking onto the practice field, and I looked on the unoccupied practice field, and I see a guy working out, and I'm like, and he says, "KC, what's up, man?" And I look over, and I'm like, "Oh crap, that's Roy Barker. What's up, Roy? How you doing, man? Good to see you." And I turn back, and I kind of go to practice, and someone's like, "Hey, you know that guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Roy Barker, man. Roy Barker had 12 sacks last year. He was in the Pro Bowl. And then it dawns on me. I'm like, Roy Barker had 12 sacks in the Pro Bowl last year. He's working out for us. I'm like, man, and that's so you realize really quickly that no matter how good you are, what you're doing, you think you're improving. It's always just a cutthroat. Have to get better by the day. NFL is a bullet speed train moving at the speed of light, and if you're not on it when the season begins, it's like you fall behind, you get left out, and so I think that was the biggest part of obviously the speed of the game and everything else, but the business side, knowing that, everyone, it's like there's tricks to the trade, and there's, your collective football IQ. There's, how do you eat? How do you take care of yourself? How do you structure your life? What kind of distractions do you have? Do you talk to a sports psychologist? Are you maximizing your, mental output? I mean, all these different components that can possibly make you a better player or make you a more effective, it's just that part of it was really daunting. That part is part of the game that you have to learn how to quote unquote be a pro. So
Interesting. Now, we're gonna talk about something I don't really want to talk about, but let's talk about the Super Bowl, man.
okay.
Maybe as Titan fans, some people will skip this, but I want to know your experience that season, what that club meant to you, and then the big game.
That year was special for so many reasons, but it was 3 years in the making. Dick Vermeil walked in and he said, "In 3 years, we'll be world champs. Look around, look to your right and left. The person next to you might not be there, it might be you, but we are going to win a world championship." And we set about the arduous path of, weeding out the people who weren't bought in and everything else. And I mean, we went through so much crap. I mean, there was almost a team mutiny by the way things were doing. We were practicing in a way that, was far below league standards in terms of the length of practice, the number of padded practices. I mean, we were breaking all kinds of rules. And, we weren't winning games. We were like 3-13, like the year before the Super Bowl. I mean, we were, but somehow we were improving, if that makes any sense. Like, especially like defensively, we found our resolve. We had a good group of guys like myself and DeMarco Farr, Ray Agnew, Keith Lyle, Todd Light. We just had a bunch of guys who were tired of losing. And, the instrumental part that is history that you look back on. But like when Dick Vermeil came in, he drafted Grant Wistrom. He drafted Orlando Pace. He drafted Torrey Holt, Azahir Hakeem, Tony Horn. He brought in all these players. He found a guy who was a point guard on a basketball team at a small, HBCU that also played linebacker, a guy named London Fletcher, who was undersized. And so we had all these guys, and we had this ragtag group. And Kurt Warner, funny enough, had been brought in the year before, and he was our third string quarterback. He ran our scout team. And, I'd get pissed off at our defensive backs because we'd have to repeat plays in our team period. And, Todd Light's telling me, he's like, "Man, this guy just came from the, Arena League, and his accuracy is just at another level. He just does not miss. Guy throws, one of the best deep balls. I'm telling you, this guy is good." So we knew Kurt was good, a long time ago. And then, of course, we bring in Trent Green from Washington. We bring in Marshall Faulk via free agency. And like I said, all those draft picks, and then there's our team. So we go into the last preseason game. Trent Green gets hurt. Rodney Harrison blows out his knee in the fourth preseason game. my dad's calling me panicked and saying, what's going to happen? I thought we were going to, finally win this year. I'm like, Dad, try to hold together. We're going to be fine. Kurt's pretty good. And defensively, like, we got weapons. We got Marshall in the backfield. I'm like, he's going to be fine. He just has to really game manage. And, after about the first couple of games, it was clear that we were going to do more than just game manage on offense. And when we faced off against the Titans the first time, we knew we were building something special. We knew how we talked, how we walked, how we acted. And this was all prior to us starting to win. We were already transformed when we were 3-13. We were different. We thought of ourselves differently. Frank Gans, our special teams coach, God rest his soul, we refer to ourselves as elite warriors on the threshold of greatness. And that's how we regarded ourselves. And when we started to win, about halfway through that season, we ran into a buzzsaw in Nashville, Tennessee, called the Tennessee Titans. And we came against another team that had a strong, similar culture that we did. And they were fierce and did not back down. And they came out in the first half and got on us 21-0. We go into halftime, and no one says a word, because that's who we were. No one's pointing the finger. No one's panicking. No one's doing anything. But I'm pissed. Like, I'm fuming. I'm just, I'm playing against John Runyon. He's a little dirty. I got Bruce Matthews, doing dirty stuff, pulling. I got Benji Olsen. Every time I come inside, he's, putting his hands on me. Oh, I blocked you. I'm hearing it, and I'm just done. I'm done with Frank Wycheck, got arrested. So I'm done with all of them. I'm pissed. And I walk into the locker room, and we're sitting down, divided up, offense, defense, and no one's really saying anything. The coaches are going over adjustments on the dry erase board. Marshall Faulk just gets up, and he says, "Hey," like this, and then he walks over in the middle of the room, and there's this table full of Gatorades and coolers, and he just turns it over and doesn't say a word, puts his helmet on. All of us right then on cue, grab our shit, walk outside, and go back out there, and I start pointing at the whole offensive line. I'm like, y'all won't score another damn point. We're going to kick your ass. And I mean, pardon my language, I'm just going off, yelling up, I'm snot out of my nose, tears running down my face. I'm just belligerent, angry. And we came back and started tattooing them second half. They get a field goal. Aldar Greco kicks it, makes it 24-21. And we come back. We miss a field goal at the very end that would have sent it to overtime. And I'm walking off that field. I'm like, you better hope we don't see you again. You better hope you don't. I'm like, we'll see you in Atlanta if you make it there. I mean, I'm just, and we were, and right then, losing that game, that's when I knew we were going to the Super Bowl. Because we didn't blink. Someone hit us in the mouth. Someone had a better game plan. We thought they were going to go Eddie George left, Eddie George right. They came out throwing screens to Frank Wycheck and swing passes and everything else. Whole game plan looked completely different than everything we saw on tape. And they beat us. On a given day, they were the best team on game day. But that's when I knew from that point, and that team, that 99 Rams team, never looked back. And I remember talking to a buddy of mine, Zach Wiegert, who played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if people don't remember, the 99 Jaguars team is the best team that no one will remember. Okay, that team was absolutely loaded. They were 14-2 in the regular season. And Alex, I'm going somewhere with this, all right? I'm giving you a history lesson, all right? They were 14-2 in the regular season. You know who their two regular season losses were to? The Tennessee Titans, okay? So I'm talking to my buddy Zach, and he's saying, he's like, oh, man, can't wait. We got to play the Titans in the championship game, and I'll see you in Atlanta. We're going to have a beer. And I'm like, yeah, man, and I'm all excited. And I'm like, yeah, we got Tampa Bay, and they think they're going to just, stymie our offense, but they don't know, they got to outplay our defense. We're going to kick their ass. We're going to get on them. And that's what happened. We ended up outplaying, the mighty Bucs defense that day. And I'm watching the championship game between the Titans and the Jaguars. And I'm like, Mark Brunell, Tony Baselli, Leon Searcy, Kyle Brady. I mean, just Keenan McCardell, Jimmy Smith, Fred Taylor. I mean, this team is stacked. Okay, this is a team full of Hall of Famers. This is a team, the best team that no one will remember was the 99 Jacksonville Jaguars team. It's because they lost 3 games that season
Against the
and
Titans.
all to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
So we get to the game, Atlanta, everything. It's the biggest game of your life. It's a whirlwind. We didn't have the weekend between because of the scheduling or whatever. So we went right to Atlanta right after the championship game. And we're there. And, the hoopla's on all week. The first quarter, we're thinking, okay, what are they going to do to us? What are they going to come out and do? And we're thinking that they're going to be, more, I don't know, ball control or whatever, but we were ready for them to start doing all the multiple stuff, all the screens and stuff they did in the first. And that's what they did. And they fell behind in the first half. Shame on them, game plan thing. And then that second half, to this day, I have never been more exhausted. I've never played as hard as I had to play that second half in 14 years of pro football. And I thought I was going to physically die. I didn't know, I didn't have anything left by the end of that game. It was Eddie George left, Eddie George right, with a guy who cared nothing about carrying the ball or doing anything offensively. All he wanted to do was hurt people, and that was the guy blocking for Eddie George named Lorenzo Neal. And he was 260 pounds, so it just wasn't really fair. And I mean, it was exhausting, but we somehow pulled it out. Kurt Warner to Isaac Bruce, and we were able to hold out. And God bless Mike Jones for making the tackle, on Kevin Dyson at the waning moments. And people say, "Oh, we were a yard away from winning." No, you were a yard away from tying the game, and you would have had to beat us in overtime. Okay, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
All right, relax, Kevin. All right, relax. Yeah.
but it was a monumental, blessed memory that I'm thankful to be on the winning side. But that's the kind of game and that's the kind of experience that you look back on. And after having joined that group, after playing against them, you wish that there could have been two winners, because there really were. There were two great teams. Jeff Fisher is still, to this day, if you ask my wife of 30 years, Shima, she will tell you that Jeff Fisher is her favorite coach that I ever played for in 14 years of pro football and in college. And that's no knock on anyone else. I played for Spurrier. I played for Gruden. I played for Saban down in Miami. I played, for Dick Vermeil. And, she has Jeff Fisher in a completely different stratosphere of love and respect. And the same goes for Nashville. I mean, loved living there. It was a blessed time in our life. So wonderful to be a part of it. It means more as the years go by.
Definitely, man. Just a quick question about playing against a Steve McNair. How do you game plan? What was it? Where do you attack? Do you try to keep them contained? How's that approach?
Well, you could keep him contained, but you've got to bring him down.
It's hard.
and that was part of the biggest issue. He was as talented as he was as hard to bring down as a Corey Dillon or a Fred Taylor. If you can imagine that. He had the strength, the elusiveness, the speed, the sheer power to get away from you, and also manhandle and muscle. You could not bring him down. He was that strong. And he had a cannon for an arm, could make any throw in the offense. If plays broke down, his eyes were downfield. He was one of the most complete quarterbacks, I think, in the history of the game. And that's how he should be remembered. I mean, there's nothing short of that would be anything short of that would be an injustice. It wouldn't do justice. But playing against him was, I mean, I'll share this with you. In the first quarter of the Super Bowl, I went in to try and tackle Steve McNair, and I went low, and I came in right around his waist, because I'm like, you grab him high, he shucks you off. You grab him low, he steps out of it. So I'm going to chop him in half. I'm going to take him out, through his, from his waist to his midsection ribs. And he sees me at the last minute, puts an arm out, and he stiff arms me, separates my right shoulder. Ooh. By stiff arming me in the first half. I go to the sideline. My shoulders are all hanging down, out of joint, out of socket. Tears running down my face. I'm pissed. I'm more pissed than anything, because I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me. This effing quarterback just stiff armed me and separated my shoulder. I'm the best defensive end in football. Put this damn thing back in. I'm going back in the game. Don't take my helmet, trainer. And I literally went right back into the game, got it taped up at halftime. But that's how strong Steve McNair was. Okay. Make no mistake. If anyone will tell tales of folklore about who the most elusive, strongest, who was one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. And I know that, since he's not with us anymore, people tend to try to memorialize or play up things. This is not an overstatement. He was simply one of the most fierce competitors and the best teammates and the best quarterbacks fundamentally that I've ever been around and been blessed to play with. And I played with some pretty damn good ones. Okay. I played with Danny Werfel, in college. Shane Matthews. I played with Kurt Warner, Trent Green. Okay. I played with Jeff Garcia. I played with some pretty good quarterbacks, some pretty good dudes along the way. And I can tell you that he's at the top of that list. God rest his soul.
Definitely, man. Now, you got traded from the Rams to the Titans. Was there, ringing in your ear? Did you know it was kind of coming, or how's that work out, especially with the NFL? Is it something like they're like, hey, yeah, you're getting traded and that's it?
No, well, this situation was a little different because I was in a situation where, and this is where the business side of football comes in. This is where, and I will freely admit this, and I've since talked to all parties and, but when you're young and you're afraid that you might not get the contract you deserve, you're afraid of taking a deal that's not worth, your money. It doesn't pay your worth. So for me, I had led the league in sacks for, in essence, 3 seasons. Since the start of 1998 until 2001, there wasn't anyone who had more sacks in the NFL than me. I think that's 40, 42 and a half, 43, 44 sacks, something like that in 3 years. And I was, drastically underpaid because I was still working off of my first contract. Now, I was a first rounder, make great money, right? But, and this is not me bragging. This is just, you can look this up, Google it, whatever. But like, $2 million a year at that time compared to, Strahan, I guess, or Robert Porcher or any of those guys, they're all making 7 or 8 at the time. And it was time for me to get paid. Okay. I first team all pro, led the league in sacks, big honking ring, got a banner hanging from the thing. Hey man, you got to pay the piper.
Yeah.
And so basically, there was, 2 contracts that were going to be done. And basically it was going to be between me, Kurt, and Isaac. And so whoever said yes to the deal, and roughly the deals were all the same amount of money. Basically those are the guys who were going to get paid. And so I was kind of left out in the cold because I didn't accept the deal.
Gotcha.
The deal was backloaded. It wasn't indicative of the money that I should make and what I was going to make in the first 4 years, which is all you can kind of bank on along with your signing bonus. The dollars per year just weren't there. So we began looking elsewhere. I was confident in my ability. I'm like, I'll play for the franchise tag, whatever. I didn't hold out. I was in camp on time, that 6th year after Super Bowl. And really, that was the first year that Mike Martz had taken over as the head coach. And what people didn't know is that, Martz was sort of scheming on the head job while he was the offensive coordinator, right, wrong, and indifferent. And so, Dick Vermeil catches wind of this and he makes it easy. He steps down. A year later, he's in Kansas City, right? But he had accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish. He won a world championship. And so the new regime with Mike Martz, players have run-ins with coaches all the time. Okay. And I was in the middle of a contract squabble. He saw it as, me not wanting to play for him. I could give a damn about playing for him. I was in my 6th year, man. I just had a baby. Yeah. I led the league in sacks for 3 years and I make $2 million a year. Like, we got to change this. Like, it wasn't about anything like that. But, a younger man, a lot immature, a lot of things were said, people fighting through the media. But then my agent basically is good friends with Floyd Reese. Okay. And, and when the free agency starts up, I got a franchise tag on me, and I know I'm going to have this tag. But he's like, look, is there a deal we can make to get him out of to get him out of here? And at the time, Kenny Holmes had left and went somewhere else, and so you still had Javon Curse, you had John Thornton, you had Henry Ford, Joe Salavea, Robert Smith, had a bunch of D linemen, but you needed another end, and so it was a match made in heaven. Fisher and Coach Fisher and Floyd Reese were big fans when they drafted Steve McNair number 3 overall in the '95 draft, same draft that I was in. They had considered taking me, but of course, new organization, got a franchise quarterback. It's the right move to make, but he wasn't going to pass on this opportunity to get me there, and so I was really excited. I felt like I was being recruited all over again. I kind of felt that it was kind of free agency, kind of the romanticizing, but I didn't have the full blown, free agency because I was still technically going to be under a franchise tag. But we worked a deal, and they gave up a first round pick, and the next thing you know, I'm a Tennessee Titan. So I have to really credit my agent Harold Lewis for doing such a wonderful job at the time and getting me out of a not a volatile situation. Obviously, the Rams were a good team and they went on to be good after that, but it just wasn't a good situation for me personally because of the working arrangement that was in place. And I was never going to be able to, I couldn't do anything more than lead the league in sacks and be first team all pro. If that's not enough to get me paid, then I need to go somewhere else. And that's the business side of football, right? Everyone doesn't value you the same. And I was fortunate to be able to go to another great organization like the Tennessee Titans, but I made the money that I wanted to make. And from there on out, through the rest of my career, I made moves to ensure the dollar amount. There's no way on this earth that you can play at that level if you don't love it. But there's no way you can play at that level if you do it without the financial guarantee, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't safeguard, if you don't be scrutinous and know your worth, then you'll walk away from a game, with headaches and possible CTE, not having been worth your time. So that was kind of the whole story of how I left, St. Louis and became a Titan.
Well, I'm glad you became a Titan. Everyone in Tennessee loved that you were a Titan. Again, fantastic. Defensive wise, amazing. I think they started the Titans that year with you. I think the record was like 7-9 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep, we were 7-9 first year.
Right? 7-9. And I mean, you had that defense was disgusting. Javon Curse, again, a Gator, just like you. How was that relationship? Did you guys connect automatically just because of obviously the college roots?
Yeah, the funny thing about Freak, Freak was coming in as a freshman.
Yep.
When I was leaving to go pro, and I remember because Coach Spurrier called me out of the blue, and I'm like, now Coach Spurrier and I are great. I mean, to this day, love the man. Love Mr. Spurrier, love his family. But I was a senior getting ready to go pro. I'm wondering, why is the head coach calling me? And he's calling me because we got a big recruiting weekend. And he says, I know you don't, you're not really in the whole hosting thing. You're getting ready to go pro and all, but if you could stop in, see a couple of recruits and kind of, have a word with me, I think it'd mean a lot. And I was like, well, who were these recruits, coach? And he's like, this kid named Mike Peterson, he's a pretty good linebacker, he, as history tells, he's pretty good. But then there's this kid, we don't really know what he is. He's kind of a linebacker, but he plays strong safety. He played everything in high school, but we think we're going to play him an outside linebacker, maybe rush in or something. But he's just too talented not to get, his name's Javon Curse. He's from Fort Myers. And I said, all right. So I go over and meet this kid. He's a, absolute specimen of a kid even back then. And I kind of tagged along with their host, and got him in everywhere. And I'm kind of the big man on campus. I was All-American, get ready to go pro. So I kind of gave him the all-star treatment, kind of hanging out with them. And that was it, And then, of course, I go on to the NFL. Javon Curse is doing great things. They're winning national titles and winning SECs and everything else. And then, lo and behold, 4 years later, he comes into the league with just a frenzy, everyone talking about the freak. So naturally, it was a nice reunion. Javon is one of my favorite people to this day. Just salt of the earth, good person, good dude, tremendous talent. I think I learned a lot from him, funny at the time. And I think I'd like to think that he learned a lot from me. I'd like to think that I brought a level of professionalism and steadfast consistency, play at a high level, set an example that, was there for, I'd like to think that I was kind of an example, for the room. That's why I was brought in there, to kind of be that guy that could, I played the most snaps, could play multiple positions, do anything we needed to, kind of take the brunt. And I knew coming in there that it was Kevin Carter's show, right? I was a high priced, cog that basically enabled the defense to work the way it needed to. It highlighted, Peter Sherman, balled out because he's playing, behind me. And, we get this kid named Albert Hainsworth. We draft this kid. And so I'm supposed to mentor him and be a big brother to him and all this stuff. So I'd like to think that, Titans teams were good for a long time because of the roots and because of the relationships we had, playing. And that defensive line room was sick. Okay. I mean, absolutely. When I look back on the talent we had, I mean, Jim Washburn, who was our defensive line coach, and Wash is just the man. Talk about a great interview if you haven't talked to him already. But Wash was, man, he was crazy. And he inspired such a level of play. And dare I say, I got better when I joined the Tennessee Titans organization. You don't think that, especially when you're playing in your prime years, but he gave my career more years. He brought an attention to detail and just from a down to down basis and a level of play, and so that room was awesome. So the reunion, the relationship with Javon was, man, those were special years. Those were great years. Talk about that 7-9 season. That next year, we started off 1-4, 1-5, or something like that, and then we won like 11 straight. Talk about a magical, transformative season. Talk about vindication and justification. I'm sitting here with my kid at the time, who was 1 year old, and we're watching the Rams lose to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, 2 years after, I leave there, and I'm sitting on the floor playing with my son, and I'm like, and I'm just a long way off from that. And then not even 12 months later, this new team that I joined, has been able to manufacture something close. And just, Schwartzy, just the whole coaching staff. We just had, Everett Withers. That whole group, man, just special group of people, special moment in time. We had such great memories in Nashville.
That was, again, and that year was, you made Pro Bowl. I think you had 10 sacks, right?
Yep.
Woo! Man. Now,
good year.
Now playing, defense and stuff. Can you explain maybe the scheme you guys had back then for the Tennessee Titans? Did you have any maybe moves that you like doing? Is there anyone that you went up against that you knew you could take advantage of? Like, okay, this is a team I like playing because of so-and-so, or anything like that by any chance?
Well, the one thing that we did, from a dynamic standpoint, I think having the defensive line that we had, we played a true four-man, like a true 4-3, set. And because of the pieces that we had from a schematic standpoint, and I'm gonna get a little high football IQ X's and O's for a minute.
That's why I got
so
you.
basically, we're playing this 4-3. You have to understand something.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm playing in a 6 technique, head up over the tight end, and I was a 300-pound defensive end. Okay, so there was an element of power and strength that we had up front that a lot of teams did not have. If you had the type of left end like a Strahan or a Robert Porcher, there weren't very many of us in the game that could really redefine what you were going to do on a particular side of an offense. But like, I wasn't worried about tight ends. I crushed tight ends. I played the backside C gap by mushing them into the hole. Like, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't run a power O. You couldn't run tosses. And then when you thought that you were gonna, we're gonna run right at them to maybe make it null and void, you didn't gain any yards when you ran at me. Like, because number one, I'm dominating whoever I'm playing against, but I got Albert Hainsworth or Robert Smith or John Thornton in like inside playing next to me. You're not doing anything there. And the dynamic of fast flow linebackers that we had. I mean, obviously Randall Godfrey was one of the smartest guys on the field, right? And we had guys like Keith Bullock and Rocky Boyman and Peter Sermon who were uber talented. I mean, Keith Bullock, Mr. Monday Night. I mean, that dude, his range from sideline to sideline allowed us to do things, and we knew each other. Just the relationship between players, playing with Blaine Bishop, having someone who was a defensive back but gave that type of football IQ and just grit and would knock the tar out of you, inside of the tackle box. We did things from a defensive standpoint that basically accentuated schematically what we were trying to do. Like, most teams could not do what we could do defensively because of the personnel we had running it. I could allow for Javon to be wild and crazy and do whatever rush you want to do on the other side. Guess what? You had a 300-pound, all-pro defensive end that nothing gets past on this side. Like, I'm not. You're not running bootlegs on me. Play action stuff. Like, I'm sniffing all this out. I'm as smart as your quarterback. Like, my IQ is way up here, and we were able to really do a lot just with, I'd go inside on third down and play tackle, in our rush, and we bring in like, Carlos Hall or Jaquay Thomas, Lamar Odom. We had guys we could roll that could supplement and rush. Travis LeBoy. I mean, we had dudes that could play. We just had so many guys that could roll, and the combinations that we could present to another team were really hard to get over. You talk about a team or a person that there's one person that I played against that had my number, and I don't mind saying it because this person should be in the Hall of Fame and will be soon. If they ask me, Robert Porcher, Michael Strahan, Simeon Rice, the guys who have over 100 sacks in the history of the game. If you ask us who the best offensive tackles are, we will tell you. And one of those guys is not in the Hall of Fame, and that is Willie Anderson from the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. Like, just a dude. So that's another conversation, but he was the one who presented the problem because of fundamentally, I didn't match up well. He was just a monster. He was big. His technique was good, and I couldn't outsmart him.
Okay.
So, but there were very few teams that we could not seize an advantage. Even if the person I was playing against was all pro or whatever, we could manipulate someone else with our personnel. I would seek a matchup during the week. I'd go inside and attack a guard or their center or do something. Jim Washburn was so good at finding those matchups, and we could freely interchange our personnel up front because we were so good and we had so much depth.
Jeez. Again, a wrecking machine. That defense, just naming some of those players, I'm like, oh man, like it just, man, some good times, man, some good times. And then again, 2003, 12-4, he had 5 sacks, was the number 1 ranked rushing defense. Like you said, there was no one was running through. No one was running through. Absolutely not.
No. So we had great seasons there. I tell you that 2000, I think the 2003 season, we lost it to the Patriots in the playoffs that year. And, another great season. But when we went up there to play the Patriots at Foxborough, like, we knew that we were the best 2 teams in pro football. We knew whoever won that game was going to go on to win the Super Bowl. And of course, the Patriots, they ended up winning and they go win the Super Bowl that year. But yeah, just a wonderful, blessed time in my life. Really fortunate to have played for the Titans.
And you played 233 games.
Right.
You didn't miss one game. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
That's unheard of, man. Especially nowadays. I mean,
That's
obviously,
not smart.
I mean, you
That's
probably,
not smart.
I mean, yeah, there's probably been some of the games that you probably shouldn't have played. There was anything that was
I
like,
didn't know any better.
I mean, I get it. You're probably really into the game, wanted to play. Was there like a injury at all that you knew you're like, hey man, I shouldn't be playing, but here we are. I'm playing it at all with the
You,
Titans.
that's the funny part. And I say that and I laugh about it and I say, oh, I shouldn't have done that or whatever. I didn't know any better. The truth is there are some people that are, I don't, however you want to explain it or however you want to slice it up, you could say that it's good luck. My wife says that I have a horseshoe buried somewhere like on my person. She says I got a horseshoe up my butt because I'm lucky on certain things. But um, I never missed a game in my life. I never missed a game in high school
That's right.
or in college or the NFL. Football hurts, right? Physically. But it never really hurt me that bad. So that's the best way to say it. And when I started the first real conversation with myself that I actually considered what it was I was doing to my body
Mm-hmm.
and considered my long-term health was a conversation that I had after my 14th season, sitting down with Bill Belichick in his office for 2 hours discussing whether I wanted to play pro football or not.
Wow.
He had offered me just a deal that was too good to be true and guaranteed two more years.
Mm-hmm.
The perks were amazing. I won't go into the details, but it was a great opportunity. And that's the first time that I ever thought about my longevity.
Okay.
And I turned around and walked away from the game. But I walked away on my own terms. I walked away completely healthy.
There you
No
go.
season-ending injury, no Achilles, no blown out knee, no nothing. And I am, thank God, as healthy as a horse at 51, going on 52 years old today. So,
There you go.
but I never, it just didn't, like, I didn't, guys, and look, there's a reality to the NFL. It's a physically violent game that it beats the crap out of you. And and the stories of CTE and then the horror stories about people and their health going forward is very real. Football, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a chance you take every time you go out in the field. But I never took a lot of drugs. I didn't take a bunch of shots. I didn't, do a bunch of doctor inducing things to make me play. I was always surprised. When I looked around at what people were doing, various stops I had in my 14 years,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you're taking that just to practice? Holy mackerel, and just the amount of stuff that people would do. And I said to myself, I said, I'm lucky, I'm blessed. I have the luxury because I don't have to take
To do
that
that.
stuff to play. But if I ever did, would I have the courage to walk away? Would I have the courage to walk away from something so lucrative, right? And you're gambling with later years in your life. Is it worth it? I mean, do you think it's worth it? Is it worth it for your kids to go to private schools? Is it worth it for to ensure generations or putting down wealth for your family or taking care of your people? And you have an opportunity, man. This is some of these football players are like they're like Atlas. They got the weight of the world on their shoulders and families and everything else. And so it's a lot. But thank the Lord, I never had to make that decision. I never So, like I said, I played 14 years, never missed a game.
That's
Walked into the league, walked out on my own terms, and the rest is history.
that's
I'm
rare.
just one of those anomalies.
It
So,
really is. That's really rare, and that's truly amazing. That's awesome to hear, because again, there's been some horror stories,
yeah.
and but I'm glad you're doing great. College/pro football analyst. How's that going? Again, CBS. I mean, you got it all, man. Looking good on the suit and everything. I've talked to
Right.
Jason McCourty again
Mm-hmm.
for Titan. He's doing his thing, and I love seeing players, especially doing something they love after football, and regardless,
Right.
still involved in football. How'd you land it? How you like it?
Well, when I was playing for the Titans, funny enough, there was a guy named John Dwyer who was the news anchor at Channel 2 in
Okay.
Nashville and the ABC affiliate. And he was a good friend. He was also on the board for Make a Wish. And I, good friends with the people from Make a Wish of Middle Tennessee. We sort of became partners, the Kevin Carter Foundation, with Make a Wish of Middle Tennessee, and we partnered with an event that ran the span of 20 years there in Nashville called Waiting for Wishes. Jay DeMarcus of Rascal Flats was my co-host in this endeavor, and my board was made up of people like John Dwyer, like I mentioned, a guy named Ben Handback, just really good people in the Nashville community. And but John was always encouraging me to come in and promote my events when we were trying to get it off the ground. And he's like, you have a wonderful speaking voice, you have a good presence. I know you do a lot of charity work, but you should really consider getting in front of the camera, to really drum up, more support and get more people. This Nashville is a ripe community. There's nothing, no one's really doing anything here. It's
Mhm.
like the Titans are one of the biggest things in town, man. You can really galvanize and do this. And I saw the opportunity to do great works in the community because people were waiting to rally around something good, good people in Nashville. I mean, just salt of the earth, Bible Belt, just good people. And and I made the appeal, walked in, hit the pavement, and walked in and shook hands with, a bunch of CEOs of corporations and said, "This is my vision. This is what I want to do. Will you help me?" And John Dwyer really helped me to do that. Him and Ben Handback. Um, but but John was always, like I said, getting me in front of the camera, getting me in front of the camera. He says, "Why don't you come in and do a guest spot and do the sports extra with me, Sunday night, and I'd play a game, go eat with my family, hang out and everything, and then around 11 or so, I'd go back to the studio and do the sports extra with John, and I would, report and just do normal stuff, give my take on the day of sports, but then I would say, oh yeah, I'm Kevin Carter. Kevin Carter Foundation is having its third annual Waiting for Wishes Celebrity Waiters Dinner, hosted by myself and Jay DeMarcus of Rascal Flat, blah 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 blah. And so I did that and became more and more and more visible in front of the camera, and saw that it was definitely a way that if you can articulate, if you can enunciate what you need, man, you can get people. You form this platform. It's all about perception in this world, right? And I always thought that doing television, doing stuff like that was shallow, but
Mhm.
I felt empowered and I felt justified to be in front of the camera because I was doing with pure intent and I was raising money for something great. And so after doing that and being in front of the camera for so long, when I retired from pro football, I was looking to kind of see what to do next, how to redefine myself. And I got on a speaker circuit and, started doing motivational speaking, which was fun.
Mhm.
You make good money. You go to these company mixers and you talk about teamwork and winning a world championship, and you
There you
tell
go.
stories about the locker room and everything, and they pay you, and then you have a few drinks, shake some hands, kiss some babies, and you walk out, with your fee and everything else. And I was enjoying that for a little while, but it wasn't really building something that I thought that I could parlay into a career, something that I would want to do. My football agent says, "Hey man, I got a friend of mine who's a broadcast agent, thinks she'd be perfect in front of the camera to do commentating, to do analyst work." And I'm like, those guys, they talk about this, they'll sell people down the river, they talk trash about this. And he's like, "Well, you don't have to do that. You can have whatever voice you want." And so I gave it a try reluctantly. I went to work on a Fox Sports South, like this regional SEC show, and I was on with Randy Cross and Tim Couch. and it's my first work, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, talking ball, with former football guys, and we're analyzing things, and we're not, you're not selling people down the river. You're like, no, this game was lost because of the matchup here, this and that. These kids were ready to play. They did this. They timed possession and turnovers, and you know, and I really got into the science and the true analysis. The love for the game really came back for me in a way that I didn't anticipate. I didn't think that I would like broadcasting. And it turned out to be something that kept me both relevant from a perception standpoint. It kept me out there. And when I stepped up and I said, hey, Hannah Storm, would you come to my event in Nashville? Hey, Bob Costas. Hey, Rick Springfield. Hey, you know, Tito Ortiz. Hey, Billy Zabka, who played Johnny from Karate Kid. Will you come to my when I step up to these stars and these people and ask them to partner with me on my endeavor to do good in the community, you know, it just multiplied. It became, it fed itself. And so doing television work kept me close to a game that I love so much. I can go to any practice. I can walk in any facility because I'm a news guy. I'm a media guy. And, I'm a former player. So I get this carte blanche. I get to be a fly on the wall and I get to go to these programs, these college programs, high school programs. And I get to see and give input and give a motivational speech to the kids and stuff like that. It's such a wonderful existence to have, but I never knew that it would be as fulfilling as it is just talking about football on television. 7 years with ESPN and the SEC network, now currently finishing up my 6th year with CBS Sports Network. It's a great gig. And I don't, and I'm on the CBS Sports Network side. We do a lot more Group of Five, Service Academy football. And I just love the product. I love talking about, X's and O's, coaching relationships, coaching trees, kids in the portal, and, how they can manifest their best performance, who has the consistency from week to week, who I think is going to win. It's all been very, very exciting to be a part of. So like I said, broadcasting, I've truly been blessed in my life to have two occupations that don't feel like work. So I'm actually in my dressing room at CBS right now. I'm up in New York City. But it's a great gig. So I'm thankful that I'm doing something that I love.
That's awesome, man. Before I let you go, because I know you're busy, you probably gotta get on broadcasting right now. Your favorite memory as a Titan? Go. That might be a little bit hard, but if there's a memory or play situation, whatever.
It was my 2nd year there in Tennessee.
Okay.
It was the season that we started off 1-4. And I remember when we got on this roll and no one gave us a chance because at that time, Javon had gotten hurt. He broke a bone in his foot. So he was out like the first part of the season, didn't come back until later. And we were really trying to piece it together. Carlos Hall was starting at the end, me and Carlos, and we were, for the first time, depth-wise along the defensive line, we were a little bit waning. We had a bunch of tackles, but we didn't really have a lot of ends and stuff, and we kind of made do. And I remember just battling through that season, and I remember what it was like to change the momentum of a team, change the forecast of where we thought we would go based upon that 1-4 start. And week by week, incrementally, we clawed and fought our way back collectively. We found our strength. I mean, number 9 was amazing. And defensively, man, we band together. I think one of my best memories from that season is we go down to Houston, the last game of the season, regular season, and David Carr is a quarterback, and that poor kid got hit so much, but they were kind of on the up and up then, and I think we had to win that game to win the division, and seal our our road into the playoffs. I think either I'm trying to think if we had to. Yeah, if we won that game, I think we won the division. It means we had a first round. We had a wild card playoff game, and I remember that game, and afterwards we won, and we're all happy. And my agent is calling me. He's blowing my phone up, and he's like, he's won't stop calling me. I'm like, usually, like, what's my agent calling me in the middle, all during the game, all these missed calls and everything, and finally call him, and I'm on the bus in Houston with my little box lunch or whatever, heading to the airport, and he's like, "Hey man, congratulations!" And I'm like, "Thanks, I'm really happy. We won the division. We're gonna go to the playoffs." And he's like, "No, man, you got your 10th sack today of the season, so it means that you get a $250,000 bonus for hitting double-digit sacks." And I'm like, "What?" and so that was a little feather in my cap, it was a little caveat, but it was also, there was a lot more there. Like the year prior, I had 2 sacks, and I was coming off. I had an injury in training camp, new team, trying to adjust to a new locker room, and that second year there is when we started waiting for wishes. It's when we fought our way back from 1-4. It was such a magical, like, perseverance, like, faith based blessing of a just fight and claw your way out situation. And come to find out that even after such a wonderful triumph of a season, I had this cool bonus also, that I was due, because I had hit another milestone in my career. Hitting double digit sacks it still is, but back then, where you really had to stop the run to make people pass on you. It's the passing league now. Sacks are a lot easier to come by now, but back then, man, I mean, no one was passing to beat us. Like, we weren't, great. We were fighting and clawing our way back. We had to manufacture the production on defense, but I think that was a great memory, because here we were. I couldn't have been happier with the team situation. I couldn't have been happier with how I personally rebounded after having an injury my first year there. And, no one says it, right? But people second guess, and they're like, are you worth the money? What kind of value do you bring to this? And I took that personally. I said, man, everything that this Nashville community is, everything that this locker room is, I owe this team. I owe this community. I owe this organization for giving me another chance, for paying me the money that I wanted to make. And, just vindication. I was like, those of you who didn't put me on that list of the top defensive men in football, you thought I fell off the face of the earth. There it is. It wasn't pretty. I played nose guard, 3 technique, and I played every position on this damn defensive line all year long as we fought and clawed, for guys to get healthy. And now look at it. Now we're going to the playoffs. Now y'all can't say shit. I'm like, and so it was a powerful moment where, you set out to do something and you don't know if it's going to come to fruition, but perseverance, hard work, and really just, man, we revamped that season. And dare I say, that group of guys, that staff, Schwartz and Everett Withers, and I mean, Bruce and, Mike Munchak and Washburn and, Gunther Cunningham, God rest his soul. Man, we had great people, in that building. And that's why, I mean, it was, you can say personnel, you can say players, but without the right combination of players, personnel, front office, I mean, it's an art form to try and win in the NFL. And that was a special moment in time for me.
All right. Well, Kevin, I want to appreciate everything, all the stories, the time you have taken to hang out and talk some football. Like I said, everyone in Nashville, you're still a fan favorite. We love you, man. Thank you for all your hard work. 14 years. Again, Super Bowl champion. We'll let that one slide, but being fantastic player and person, and I wish you nothing but the best, especially with your career now, man. I do appreciate it, man, and I thank you a lot, man.
Alex, I mean this. Anytime. All right. So you watch this interview, you get a bunch of other questions or anything you want to ask me, I'll come back and talk to you anytime you want. All right. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, buddy.